sometimes you're never actually going to agree with certain people that you love in your life. You just won't agree on certain things, and that is a-okay. You just have different views on them. And so I think navigating how to either avoid those conversations, or if it's inevitable that the conversation is going to be brought up, finding a way to deflect and make it more comfortable for you to be in without, causing a scene. Hi, guys, and welcome back to the Mind, Body, Planet podcast. Today's a cool episode. I've got my friend Jackie on. She was on a previous podcast where we talked about health and wellness and using it as a way to come back to your life and come back to yourself. So if you haven't listened to that one, I highly recommend it. It's a great episode. It's actually one of our most listened to episodes as well, because it's just such an interesting and valuable lesson about how we can use health in a way that's not harming us at the end of the day. Anyways, today's episode should also be very interesting. Today, we're talking about family dynamics, especially when it comes to the holidays. We just passed Thanksgiving. Originally, this was supposed to come out the Monday after Thanksgiving, but to be honest, I just did not have time. I did not have time, and I should have planned better for that, but I didn't, so forgive me. Jackie is one of my closest friends, and both of us are well equipped to family dynamics. We both have very interesting families, and if you guys are listening, I love you guys, but you guys are interesting. So we're just talking about some of the ways that we've dealt with different difficult family dynamics and ways that maybe you can deal with them this holiday season. We're also doing some Am I the A-hole threads from the Reddit, so we can kind of tap into some other interesting family dynamics that other people have experienced, and then give our personal thoughts on them. I always just find those really fascinating and interesting to read about, and know that you're not alone, because every family is interesting and you can relate to somebody about something when it comes to family dynamics. So that's this week's episode. Let's hop into it. Hey, Jackie, welcome back to the Mind, Body, Planet podcast.
Hello. It's great to be here.
It's so exciting to have you back on. You're my first guest that has now been on the show twice.
Cool.
Pretty nifty. And a lot of people responded well to our previous episode, which was all about health and like using health as a way to return back to your lifestyle and who you are as an individual. And so if you haven't listened to that, definitely listen to it. If you're listening to this one for the first time, it's a good episode. And so yeah, should be another really good one. I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited.
Yeah. Okay, but before we get into it, let's go for this week's favorites. I have one. Do you have one? Would you like to go first?
Okay. Yeah, I can go first. My favorite is I got my Thai Fresh cookbook in the mail. Thai Fresh is my favorite Thai restaurant in Austin. And I'm a little sad because my favorite pie they make isn't in there, but the pad Thai and pad see ew and everything is. So I'm excited to try it out. I'm very stoked about it.
I didn't even know they had a cookbook.
Yeah. It's like 300 pages. Like it's thick. So they worked on it during COVID, and since they were closed, they're like, well, I guess we'll teach people to make this at home. I don't know. Maybe it was in the works beforehand and I'm totally lying. But yeah, it seems really good. I'm excited.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And their dessert cold counter. Do they have desserts in the cookbook too?
Just the ice creams. I was kind of surprised that they didn't have more, but I'll take it. I guess I'll take it because they have the pad Thai. That's what I was going for.
What was the other dish we had there? There was a tofu dish we had. It wasn't the pad Thai. It was an
We got the golden tofu appetizer. It's like curry or turmeric pan fried tofu, and then like a peanut butter sauce that you dip it in.
Yeah, that one's elite, really. Oh yeah. Okay, well, once you start making some recipes, you'll have to let me know if they're good.
Yes, we'll make them and try them out. What was your favorite for the week?
My favorite for the week is, so I went to a charity event last night, actually, and it was one that we were invited to, my fiance and I, and we showed up. We didn't even know really what the event was for, I'm going to be honest. We were like walking around, and this one person was like, oh, do you want to buy a raffle ticket? We're only giving away 100 of them. And we're like, oh, well, like, we'll go check out the raffle baskets. So we walk around, and Matt and I are like whispering at each other, and we're like, what are we even here for? And anyways, come to find out, it was a really great cause. It was for a camp that's in Rockport, Texas, and they basically host camps for kids with disabilities and kids with cancer and family members and siblings of kids that have disabilities. So they have people to relate to that are in similar situations. And yeah, it was really a really cool event to be at. Anyways, so after we saw the video that they were like, showcasing like who they are, what they do, Matt and I looked at each other and he's like, we should get a raffle ticket. So we got a raffle ticket. It was a pricey raffle ticket, I'll tell you that much. But I guess it worked out in our favor because we won one of the raffle baskets.
Okay.
I know.
That's so exciting. What did you win?
I know. We won a cooking class for 12 people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's a large group, but
It's
probably worth the price then.
yeah.
Like, that's a cool win, but also then, like, pressure to find the 12 people for that journey, but that's exciting.
I know. Yeah, Matt and I was like, "Who are we gonna invite?" And I was like, "I don't know."
We'll figure it out.
Have no clue. But it should be fun though, because we can schedule it for any time. I think in January, February. Honestly, anytime. It could probably be after that, I'm
Oh,
sure.
cool.
And pick whatever the theme we want it to be. So okay. So for this episode, we're talking all about family dynamics, especially with the holidays coming up. We've got Thanksgiving, which is in a few weeks from now, Christmas, and a few more weeks from then. And this is not an easy time for a lot of people. I think a lot of people find themselves getting really overwhelmed because there's a lot of pressure, I guess, coming from family and friends. And also thinking about, like, if you're like me, I'm a people pleaser. And so I never want to hurt anyone's feelings by doing something that I want to do. And so a lot of times, like I always know if I'm by myself and I'm like, I'm hungry, like I'll be able to pick something up so quick. Like I'll be like, oh, I want exactly this. But the second somebody else is there, I'm like, what do you want? I don't know what I want. I'm like, but whatever you want is what I want.
Yeah. You're like, even if I would rather not, like, that's what we're gonna eat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I feel like the holidays, this is definitely something where family dynamics play a huge role in how we experience our holidays. And Jackie, I love your perspective on this stuff too. So I want to give some of our general advice that we would give to anybody who has kind of interesting family dynamics, how we would personally navigate family dynamics. But before we do that, can you please introduce yourself to everybody that doesn't know you?
Yeah. I'm Jackie, like Chris just said. I don't really have like a platform or anything. I've just been friends with Chris for years, super interested in health, wellness, all things joy, fun, and well-being. So that's kind of one main thing we connect with, especially with Mind, Body, Planet, here for all of that. So that's kind of my spiel.
And I love it. Yeah, Jackie's one of my closest friends, and every time we talk, it's super casual, and I feel like I always walk away from our conversations, and I'm like, oh wow, that was like really good, you know.
Like, we learned stuff. We also watched a Hallmark movie, but we learned stuff today.
We learned that Hallmark movies are not always good.
No, not great.
So, as far as any general advice, as far as family dynamics go and navigating those during the holidays, do you have any specific tips or pieces of advice that you would give people?
Yeah, I have a few. My first one thought is clear boundaries and expectations.
Mhm.
So clear expectations for your family and for yourself. So it's important to remember what you're expecting from your family. If you're expecting a behavior maybe they haven't shown you, or a connection that hasn't been there, kind of not putting the pressure on yourself to get that out of one conversation or one sitting at dinner, because we can be setting ourselves up for disappointment and leading ourselves to a lot of frustration in the moment, rather than entering it with an expectation of, they've shown me this pattern. This is how I expect myself to behave. I expect myself to remove myself from the situation. If I see X, we'll have food and we'll leave. Anything else is just an added benefit. But when we hold ourselves to an expectation of being the healer or the glue or the fixer, and I can get this right in this one day and, maybe heal decades of issues, it just leaves us feeling pretty poorly about ourselves and leaving the interactions feeling pretty down, which will happen if there's some broken dynamics. Um, the other is, if there's tension and difficult dynamics, having escape plans. So I think it's really important to drive separately. If there's a tendency for your family to like get you in conversations you're very uncomfortable with, keep you staying longer than you would like, and kind of deny certain boundaries. Um, Driving separately would be a big one. Maybe having, you know, my husband and I, or friend and I, whatever it is, have planned the morning to cook the pie, then we'll be over, boundary there to where you can't be dragged into a whole day affair, whatever your personal escape plan is. And just remember, it's okay to step away um, if you need a moment. And it's also okay to not show up and set a new pattern for yourself, because the holidays are a time to be with people that love you and actually, are there for you, and set a pattern for your life that is joyous and that is supportive. And just because someone has a certain label in your life in societal standards doesn't demand them rights to intimacy with you emotionally, doesn't demand rights to time with you, and doesn't demand a right to a routine for the rest of your life with you. Those would be kind of my main spiels.
Yeah, I agree with you on both of those. I love that you said an escape plan, because I that is, yeah, that is my saving grace most of the time, is just knowing when I'm starting to wilt. I like to call it wilting, because I'm like a
Mhm.
flower and I'm watered and I'm fresh and I'm like ready for the sun. And then the second I stop doing like the self care, like grabbing a glass of water or like getting dragged into a conversation I don't really want to be in, I start to just wilt. And part of that, I think, is me just being introverted, I guess, like just like an extroverted introvert, I guess is what I've always called myself. And so when I start to wilt, that's when I know I got to head for my escape plan, and whatever that might be, because it's different depending on, what we're doing, who I'm with, all that stuff. But it is nice.
Yeah, and it can be different on the day too. Like some days you may feel totally fine to spend a whole day with, a certain individual, and the next day maybe you've had 2 days of it, and you're like, I have 2 hours. I have 2 hours left in the tank, and then I gotta go.
Yeah.
But I think wilting is such a good word, because sometimes when you're in those scenarios, you don't realize it's happening until you leave and you feel so exhausted emotionally, and you're just not in the state you were when you walked in. Because it just like uncomfortable dynamics and all that can just wear on you so quickly, and you won't even notice. You're just like you said, well, I just didn't drink enough water. I'm tired. We've been going all day. In reality, it's you're in like 4 uncomfortable conversations in a row in a room full of people that put you on high alert sometimes,
Oh,
like
yeah.
nervous system wise. So
Oh, yeah. I remember there are times that, like, I've left events, even if it's just like, a regular social outing, just like lunch with friends. And afterwards, I cannot speak in the car. Like, I remember after it was one of like the first events that like Matt and I went together with my family, and I love my family so much, but they're very loud and I am not as loud as they are. And so sometimes I leave those events and I'm like, I just let's not talk. Like, let's just do like 45 minutes of just silence, and then maybe I'll say a few things. And it's that way with anyone and everyone, really, because I it's just that wilting, that energy, that social battery is just like completely depleted. Even if it's my fiance or like me and you, Jackie, even in those situations, it'd be like, I just need a minute. Give me a minute.
I just need like 5 minutes
Yeah,
of
5.
just introspective and reflective sleepy time.
I also wanted to add on to your first point that you made, what about setting boundaries and how important boundaries are. And I sometimes feel like boundaries can feel like this like really lofty word, or if like you start saying like this is my boundary to somebody else, like for example, like, hey, can you come to our Christmas party on the 23rd of December? I just made all of that up. I don't actually have one on the 23rd of December. Anyways, but if somebody were to ask you to come and you're like, actually, I'm setting my boundaries, so I need to leave by 9 p.m., I feel like other people may be offended, or get the wrong idea of like, oh, well, why do you need to set a timeline of how long you can be at my party or whatever it is? And I feel like what I've learned is not necessarily like telling someone is I have a boundary, unless, it gets to that point where you actually need to have that kind of sit down conversation. But what I find really helpful for myself is I will actually get a piece of paper and I will write down, for example, with Christmas coming up, I'll write down, what do I want out of the Christmas season? What is most important for me this season? And every year it changes, right? So like some years I really want to spend it with family. Some years I'm just like, I've had a really crazy year leading up to that, and I just want to be home and I want to relax and I just want to really spend time in my own community without having to travel so much. And so writing down whatever I'm willing to do versus not willing to do. And sometimes it's really easy to write down what you're not willing to do versus what you are willing to do. So I think as long as you kind of write down one, if not both, you kind of have a good idea of what you can get out of the holiday season. And not everyone will fully understand that, for example, if you're trying not to travel. But if that's what's most important for you, then it's important to stick to that and get what you want actually out of the holiday season versus, succumbing to other people's pressure of what they want from you.
There's so many ways to state a boundary, just like you said, of like either, hey, like I'd love to come, but I have to be out of there by 9. Or hey, I have an early morning. Like there's subtle ways that if you feel safe and comfortable with that person to communicate it. Or you can even use that to, set a boundary. Maybe you don't actually have plans after, but you do need to be out by 9 because you'll be exhausted. But that's such a good idea to write down like intentions and expectations for a certain period of time, because then it's easy to kind of ask yourself, like, am I slipping away from that? Because there are some things we're going to have to do of, okay, well, I'd rather stay at home, but this is important to my partner to go to this work Christmas party. But keeping kind of a pulse check on, okay, this is my intention. I've already made one, like, not ideal, like I don't, it would be my dream to go to this thing, but because it's important to me to maintain this relationship in this holiday season and they have their goals, I'm going to go. But with those intentions and expectations, you can kind of feel when you're slipping into patterns that are pulling you away from that and know like how to pull the reins really quickly. That's a good idea to write all that down. I like that idea.
Yeah, I found it really helpful. And then the other thing that is kind of what I do whenever I'm placed in some of these uncomfortable situations is I kind of joke about it a little bit. So this is actually advice from my therapist. So if you're listening, hey. Um, but she always mentions like I'm not really always going to be the kind of person that's going to be super confrontational. Like if someone says something, I'm not really going to be the person that's like, I don't want to talk about that. So the way that I kind of get around it is I make a joke out of it in a sense. Like I wish I had a good example, but it would be like if somebody tries to ask me about my job and for whatever reason I'm like, I don't really want to talk about my job. It's kind of taking that question and, saying, oh, it's going really good and throwing it back at the other person or joking about whatever the situation it may be. And I do feel like sometimes is it always like, the best? But I think if you have certain people in your life where you're always going to have the same conversation and you're not going to agree on whatever, you agreed to disagree, then kind of joking about it.
It'd be like if someone was like, oh, so tell me like what happened with this friend, and you're not that close to tell them why that friend's not around anymore. And you're like, oh, so you want all the gossip, like, or you want all the dirt. Like, what about you, girl? I see you wearing a new ring or something like that. Like diverting it.
Yes, that is yes. Perfect example. That's exactly what I mean. Yeah.
But I mean, it's like a survival and defense mechanism for a reason. Like, it's like, yes, if we're joking all the time and can't have, honest conversations with people we're close to, that's a problem. But whenever it's like, I do not know you well enough to talk about this, and it's super weird for me to tell you that, or like, you and I have just historically gotten in arguments about politics or whatever every Thanksgiving. Like, I'm not telling you my actual thoughts on this. I'm just going to pivot. Like that's a survival mechanism for a reason. Like that has a time and a place and works very, very well a lot of the time. Like you got to do it to get through, man. Sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what's the most difficult is really balancing all of the family dynamics because sometimes you're never actually going to agree with certain people that you love in your life. You just won't agree on certain things and that is a-okay. You just have different views on them. And so I think navigating how to either avoid those conversations or if it's inevitable that the conversation is going to be brought up, finding a way to deflect and make it more comfortable for you to be in without, causing a scene. So, takeaways from our pieces of advice here. Number one is to write down your boundaries, what you're willing to do, what you're not willing to do, and what you want out of the holiday. And then also write down your escape plan. So, if you know you're going to an event and you're not an extroverted person, what's your escape plan to get out of there? What's your excuse to leave? What's your timeline that you want from that? And I think all of those are going to be great kind of building blocks or a good foundation to enjoying your event, holiday season, whatever it might be, without compromising like your own beliefs and what you want out of the holiday too.
Yeah. And one more thought I have on the escape plan thing is like, sometimes you don't have the choice to just like drive away and leave, right? If it's like sometimes having to FaceTime your own family or a friend that's alone on the holidays for 20 minutes, or volunteering to do the dishes to get out of the room where the uncomfortable conversation is, like super powerful to have. Hey, don't worry guys, like I will go get us the other thing of champagne, I will go clean the kitchen, or you know what guys, let me, you did a great job with the turkey, let me go cut up the pie and serve it, for like 5 minutes of that solace. And like grounding yourself is super, it can be helpful too if you don't have the luxury of like actual leaving.
Yeah, I think those are all great points because you're right. Not everyone has the ability to like leave, like fully get up and leave. You kind of have to find like other little plans.
Yeah, exactly, little tiny moments of escape and solace. But
So I have a few am I the a-hole like Reddit threads. So for people who aren't familiar with that, it's on reddit.com. You can go to am I the asshole basically, and it's this whole thread where people write down things and they're like, hey, was I the a-hole for doing X, Y, and Z, and then kind of people give their opinion. So it's just a place for somebody to share their experience and then kind of get a collective like, was I in the wrong, should I have handled that differently, all that jazz. And it's very interesting. So I have pulled up a few of them. I have not actually read them. So this is going to be genuine reaction for both Jackie and I. And I think we can kind of go through them and give our opinion on the situation, how we would have handled that differently, if we agree with them, if we don't agree with them, all that jazz. Are you ready, Jackie?
I'm very excited. Like I watch these all the time. I'm so excited.
Me too. I'm actually excited that I haven't read these before because I feel like, it's going to be a true reaction.
Yeah, it'll be fun for you too. I like that. It'll be a journey for both of us.
The first one is, am I the a-hole for telling my wife that she can stay home this Thanksgiving? My wife is a grade A plus picky eater. It's bothersome to a certain degree, but on holidays, basically the shit show begins. She'd refuse to eat certain meals, and my mom would take it personally, which results in a series of arguments between them. As a compromise this year, my wife offered to bring her own food to Thanksgiving dinner. I was stunned and I asked if she thought this through, and she looked at me confused. I told her about how weird it would be for her to bring her own food, especially when she wouldn't be sharing it with anyone else. And I told her to think about how my mom will react. She got very offended and upset. My wife said that it's not her problem, that she was just trying to make it work by bringing her own meal. I told her again that my mom might not like it or may not even allow it. She blew up at me asking if I want her to either eat food she doesn't like or go hungry. I suggested she give my mom's food a chance, but she said it wasn't about my mom's cooking. She just doesn't like certain foods. We had an argument, and I ended up telling her that she could stay home this Thanksgiving and have whatever meal she likes. She got quiet, then lashed out on me, calling me insensitive and negative to say this to her. I repeatedly asked her to calm down, but she couldn't stop ranting about how I was basically willing to exclude her from a major event. She started cold shouldering me about it while at the same time guilting me, saying I'm treating her poorly after she offered the perfect compromise. Perfect compromise is in quotes here. What do you think?
Um, I have a terrible poker face because, like, yeah, him and his mama need a moment
Yeah.
of reality checking. It sounds like a lot of boundaries like hadn't been set before. And what you should say is like, "Hey mom, like it's not personal. She has tried, spinach a million times. This is just how her body and taste buds are. She's going to bring her own food. I don't want comments made about it. It makes her, it's a very sensitive, like vulnerable thing to always feel left out food wise or whatever it may be.
Mhm.
If you're uncomfortable with that, neither of us will be coming. Like you don't just say, well, I'm going to my mom's house. Like good luck with your, canes or whatever you order. Like that's,
Mhm.
and it's so isolating already, I feel like, to not be able to eat all the foods, like because of your taste. It's not a choice. Like no one's just like, oh yeah, let me pick the most inconvenient diet possible. Like that's not a decision you usually just make for funsies. So for
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like there's a lot to dissect in that. So the first thought is that the husband is really concerned that his mother is going to be offended because his wife is bringing her own food that she's willing to eat. And then the
right,
other opinion is kind of the wife trying to find a compromise so she can still be a part of this holiday event, this big family event that a lot of people look forward to every year and still be
right.
a part of it. and also not leave completely hungry because she doesn't like the food. So yeah, there's two things here. I feel like on one end, as a husband, you're like, well, I don't want my mom's feelings to get upset, to get hurt, you know? And in that way, like, I totally I understand that concern, but as a mother, if someone doesn't like your food, like, no one's gonna love everything you cook, you know? Even if you're a chef, even if you're a Michelin star chef, someone may not like a specific dish that you make. And so I feel like on the wife's end, I do feel like that is a good compromise, especially for me. Like, I don't eat meat. And so most of the time when I go to family events, I don't ever expect someone to make food for me. And I'm very thankful when they do. And so in those cases, if I know there's not going to be food for me, I bring my own food or I eat something beforehand. So that way I'm not, wrapped up or really, concerned about what am I going to eat for dinner that night. And so I don't know. I think the guy is kind of the a-hole for it. I feel like there was a conversation that maybe it was one of those things where I think it sounds like it was kind of blown out of proportion a little bit.
Well, it just sounds like I I'm curious to know if these people live near his mom, if they see her often, because if they see her often, there's no way this is the first time this has come up, that she's a notoriously picky eater, but even then, they're married. It's had to have come up before. I'm curious to know if they live near each other, 1, but 2, it just sounds like he's more concerned about protecting his mom and not setting a boundary there than he is, you know, setting a boundary to protect his wife, because her feelings were probably hurt, and she was probably offended by the mom not being understanding, or the husband being unwilling to have that discussion, or the immediate, well, you can stay home. Like, that probably made her offended, just like the mom would probably be sad she didn't eat her food, you know? So, yeah, it's just, yeah, no, it's just, no, oh, I'd be curious to know how that holiday went.
Yeah, me too. And I also feel like there's another thought behind it as well. Like, if the wife is just the seriously, just notoriously picky eater, I think, I don't know, like, there's two things behind, like, that I kind of that go through my head when I think about somebody who's like a overly picky eater. Is one could be like a eating disorder sort of thing, and I'm no professional on that, but somebody who is just really very picky about what they put into their body. It could be something leaning towards that. And if that's the
Mhm.
case, that's a totally different conversation. That's like a sit down conversation. Or if it's just somebody who is just not open to trying new foods, they know what they like and they
Mhm.
just decide they're not even going to try. And I can't tell if from this story if that's the way that it is, the wife is just not willing to try, or if she's tried it before and the husband is still like kind of pushing. It'd be interesting to know a little bit more of why does she not want to eat those certain foods? Like, what is it
Yeah.
behind that? But it does sound like she's at least trying to be like, okay, well, if I know I'm not even going to try it, I'm not expecting his mom to make something that is something I can eat, you know?
Yeah, and he did say, like, she just knows she doesn't like certain foods, which tells me, like, she probably has a very narrow window of food she likes, and it sounds like she has tried maybe some, or maybe she has a really visceral reaction to food she doesn't like, and she's like, "No, I don't wanna try it on Thanksgiving," and then be, you know, in the bathroom sick, throwing up, or getting sick, and then my holiday's ruined because 'cause I'm not hungry anymore because I just got violently ill, which is, again, like, all of these require consideration, but my sister and one of my really good friends are very, very picky eaters, and it's not, they'll try anything. They'll say, "It smells so good, I wanna try that. That smells so good, blah, blah, blah," and every single time they can't do it. Like, they're on a chicken nugget, chicken tender, Alfredo, potato kind of diet, because it's just, more simple flavors, I guess, for their palate. But, it could be like that. Like, once again, it's usually not someone's choice. And also, like, if she's not comfortable trying foods, then okay, yes, that's a conversation of like, "Hey, what if we brought your safe foods that make you like, and what if are you comfortable maybe trying something while you're there?" And having a compromise, but this does not sound like a compromise is happening. But maybe they tried before, but oh no. Like, and you're right, it could be something like ARFID or something else that's very, very sensitive. And even then, already being picky it's hard, because people comment on it, eating disorder or not, that you're a grown adult eating chicken nuggets, and it's not fun usually.
Yeah, definitely. There's an update on it that says that the wife decided to spend Thanksgiving with her family, which was and and I think this is maybe the telltale sign that maybe the husband is the a-hole because he was like, which is hours away, which is unnecessary travel expense, and she ditched me for the entire week. Like that was the update on it. And I'm like, "Ah? Huh?"
She didn't wanna be alone. Also, if it's hours away, yeah, she's gonna be gone for a couple days. Also, you were busy with your mom, dude.
Yeah.
You're hanging out with your mom, probably eating leftovers on the couch that your mom made you, and she wanted to, I don't know, be not alone on a holiday. My final consensus is that it's him.
I think I would agree. I think I would agree. Just based on the update, just like the phrasing of words. She ditched me, and it sounds like this argument really got out of hand, and maybe they said things that you can't take back after you say them, and the only way to fix that is space. Okay, I have the next one. Am I the a-hole for threatening to skip Thanksgiving? I was born on Thanksgiving. As a result, every year we celebrate Thanksgiving and my birthday on the same day. I get presents, my favorite leg, and ice cream. It's how we've done it every year, with the exception of 2 years because of milestone ages. The other day, my mother makes a huge group chat and tells the immediate family that we'll have one extra guest, my brother in law. His birthday falls on this Friday, an entire week before Thanksgiving break. My mom found this out and said that we can just do a joint birthday. I told her no, I didn't want that. She argued that it was his birthday too, and she could do what she wanted. I flat out said, if I see a cake made for him, I'm leaving and I'm not coming back. The group chat did not like that. Everyone started defending my mother, calling me a brat and selfish, but I just don't want to share another thing that's supposed to be for me. My high school graduation, overshadowed by my stepfather's retirement. Getting into college, oh, my older brother got in too, an entire semester before me. Let's celebrate. I get overlooked so much. I paid for my own senior pictures and graduation pictures, but I'm conceited enough to gift those pictures to everyone for every occasion. So, Reddit, am I the a hole?
I think the phrasing was not the best,
Hmm.
maybe. But I get, like, it sounds like there's been a pent-up issue of not feeling seen and individualized, which is totally valid. And, maybe benefit of the doubt, this has been a routine conversation of like, "Hey, I want to have my own day, like, I get y'all didn't control Thanksgiving, but my graduation," all these things, and it could be financial, maybe the family couldn't afford 2 graduation parties. Um, but to say if I see a cake with that man's name on it, if I see a baked good that says, "Happy birthday, Darren," I'm losing my mind. Like, that's I feel like we could have said, "Hey, you know, would it be cool if we did a birthday dinner for him the day before?" Now, that being said, I'm biased because I think birthdays are wonderful and I think they're worth celebrating, but I don't know if they're war starting. And I feel like, after maybe a certain age, we can have the combined cake party thing. I just would have worded it differently if it's that important to you, and sounds like it triggered a lot of childhood memories of feeling lost and left in the shuffle. Um, but maybe we should have led with compromise.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think maybe the shock of hearing it in a group chat versus somebody actually calling you, hey, this is kind of what I want to do for the day. And yeah, being like, if I see something with his name on it, then I'm just gonna leave and I'm not gonna come back. Maybe the phrasing is not great, but I think you're right. It does sound like because their birthday has always been celebrated on the same day as Thanksgiving, it is always overshadowed. And I think what's difficult with birthdays is there's that comparison game. Any of your friends that has a birthday that's not during a major holiday. For example, like my cousin is born on New Year's Eve. So her birthday is often overshadowed by the new year. And
Mhm.
in those situations, you look at your friends that have birthdays in random months and they get to throw a whole party. It's a pool party with a pizza and a cake and the blah, 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 blah. And it's hard to be like, man, like I wish I could have that, but my birthday's on Thanksgiving every year. So we eat the same meal. Nothing really changes, because it's Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And I think if that really is getting to this person and they're like, I just want a day where it feels like it's my day, then yeah, maybe that is just a conversation to go about and be like, I want to celebrate my birthday on my actual birthday, even though I know it's tradition and we've done this on Thanksgiving, or finding a happy medium. If the family still thinks you're selfish for doing that, could you potentially do a smaller thing with just your friends on your actual birthday, or or something like that where it still feels special to you while also continuing the tradition, if the tradition is what's important? Because it does sound like, reading this, like, that the tradition of celebrating on Thanksgiving is what they enjoy doing that. They just want it to be just them.
Another thought is like, I wonder if they have truly communicated this issue before, because you know how sometimes parents just kind of like, but everyone's together, like they just think about the like dream family picture and not
Mm,
maybe all the moving pieces, or maybe they don't know everything, and maybe the mom thought it was like no big deal because they haven't had these conversations. But
mhm,
I would be frustrated if it's a conversation we've had a million times. But another thought is like, have we tried other compromises of like, okay, my birthday has fallen on Easter before because I'm in April. So I plan my birthday the weekend before, or even when my birthday's on a work day. Like if I want to do something with my friends, I plan it for a different day and maybe not the actual day of birth. And as you become an adult, like if you want to take a trip on your actual birthday, like yes, you have to make the call to skip Thanksgiving or not, but you could still go the week before. Or maybe the family could have worked out half birthdays. Like I don't know how much we've tried to compromise past, like yes, that is a sad reality of like having to double up, but it's the thing you can't change. So what are we doing to compromise? Like half birthdays, weekend befores, whatever it is. Just like you said, like do something small with your friends to make it a little bit more enjoyable, and then have a conversation with your family of, I've communicated this multiple times, that we've doubled up parties a lot. It's very important to me. And I'll be throwing my own from now on because I demand, it's still going to be hurtful.
right.
But I do have one thought. I don't know how like Canadian Thanksgiving works. So I'm assuming this person's in the US because Canada, what other country has a Thanksgiving? There's a couple. Um,
Mm,
but US Thanksgiving is celebrated on the fourth Thursday of every or of November,
mhm,
which means the date changes,
mhm.
which means it's actually not a birthday on Thanksgiving every single year. The actual day. Just just putting that out there. It's not like Christmas where it's the 25th. It ranges every year. So it sounds like the family is just going, since we're already together,
Right,
which is like, it sucks, but as you get older, a lot of things do turn into that of, hey, I saw you at Christmas. I'm not going to see you for your birthday. Uncle Joey, here's your present,
right.
where it's like either financial, people can't travel a lot, ability, people get older, people have their own lives, they're busy. I guess when it's your direct mother, it feels different. I'm going on a tangent now, but just to play devil's advocate.
I think you're right. I think that is a good point, that because they just celebrated on Thanksgiving, it's almost turned into, we're all here, so we might as well just pick one day versus, your birthday being 3 days before. We're all already here for this one day, so we're just gonna
Right.
tag team it together and call it a day. And I could see, as somebody, if that's always what you've experienced growing up, maybe feeling like, even if you have siblings, it sounds like this person has siblings. So if their
Yeah.
birthdays are their own individual days, it can feel like you're always overshadowed and overshined. And yeah, I think my birthday is 4 days away from Valentine's Day, and I mean, Valentine's Day isn't like a huge holiday by any means, but I could see if every single time you have a birthday party, it's always pink and red decorations, you're like,
Yeah.
"Why can't I have something
Yeah.
else?" I get it. It feels like there's a lot less wiggle room, so I think you're right. I think this person, I don't think, is the a-hole in this situation, but I do feel like maybe they could have gone about it in a different way, or at least had a conversation of, hey, like, what is in my power and in my control to make this what I want out of it. So that way I'm okay with sharing my birthday slash holiday with someone else?
Yeah. And I feel like it's one of those, like, I would be curious to know what compromises have been tried before in the family. If the family has even tried to like even the wrapping paper for a present. I have a friend that she's born on Christmas Eve, and so was her grandma. So her grandma was the only family member initially to always make sure she gave her birthday wrapping instead of Christmas wrapping. So it felt different because her grandma was like, I know how that feels. So then after that, the whole family was like, "Oh, that's very important to you guys," and started doing that, and then they started doing a breakfast brunch for her, nothing they didn't talk about the Christmas church service or anything,
Mhm.
and then the second half of the day, they moved into, like, Christmas Eve activities. So I'd be curious to know, like, has the mom done activities like that of,
Yeah.
"Okay, we always get you a cake, we always, do birthday wrapping, we always do these separate things," to where there have been compromises, or if there's never been a compromise on the parents' end, that would be incredibly frustrating, like, it's already a frustrating situation. Um, yeah. Also, how dep oh, you go. Oh? I was gonna say, depending on how far they live from each other too, it may not be realistic to do, "Let's celebrate on a different day," but that doesn't necessarily, like, maybe negate the retirement party overlapping and all these other things.
Okay, I have one more.
'Kay.
This will be an interesting one because am I the a-hole for banning alcohol from Christmas? My husband's family likes to drink. Every holiday includes multiple bottles of wine and cocktails. I hate drinking and I have never drank since my father was an alcoholic, and I think it's childish if you can't have fun without drinking. This year, I'm hosting Christmas for a change, and I decided since it's at my house, no alcohol is allowed, and we're all getting older and it's time to grow up. My husband's sister called to ask what she could bring. She saw a recipe for a Christmas martini that she wanted to bring. I told her about my no alcohol rule. She didn't say much, but must have told the rest of the family. Some of them started texting me asking if I was serious and saying that it's lame, but I'm not budging. Now, it turns out my husband's sister is hosting an alternate gathering that almost everyone is choosing to go instead. It's so disrespectful, all because they would have to spend one day sober. My husband told me he talked to his sister and we are invited to her gathering, and he said we should just go and stop causing issues, but I won't because it's rude. Now my husband is mad because I'm making him stay home and spend Christmas with me, but it was my turn to host and I chose to have no alcohol and they could have dealt with it for 1 year.
Mm, you know, that it took a turn halfway through for me, in my opinions.
Really? All right.
Mhm.
What was your first opinion
At
versus when it
first
switched?
at first, I was like, if it's like the family can have a casual glass of wine, then I do think we're getting into territory of, like, just because y I guess it is different though with her having a experience of her dad being an alcoholic, but if it's the family gets incredibly blackout and everyone's sloppy drunk and cussing and fighting and breaking things and causing messes, totally understand that.
Yeah.
But if it's a casual, like, everyone has 1 martini, I would have a conversation of unpacking, like, are you completely unable to be around it in all settings, and at what point are we unable to ourselves exist around it? If they genuinely just wanna have a casual glass of wine, then I would have a deeper conversation. Also, it sounds like we were planning on just dropping this rule at the last minute, which is weird.
Yeah.
And I like, maybe she had plans to have a, "Hey, guys, here's why. This is my home. I'm not comfortable with it entering my home, and it's my turn to host. Like, you can do a boozy brunch and then come over." But the sister to not say anything and then secretly plan a gathering is problematic.
Yeah, that's pretty messed up.
Like, to not have a conversation and be like, "Hey, this is really important to us," because, like, wine and spirits and all that are part of holidays for a lot of people, they are very celebratory, but for some people, they're very triggering, and they're not. But
Yeah.
it just like, there was no conversation on either side, and then we just went full, like, I'm not telling anyone they can't bring alcohol till the last minute, and then I'm not telling her we're having a separate party, and we're all
Uh-huh.
gonna talk about it behind her back, which is kinda crazy. So,
Yeah. Yeah, there's different parts to this. So the first one is kind of going back to our boundaries we talked at the beginning of this. So I feel like at what point are you putting your boundaries onto other people? You know, like if you're not comfortable with alcohol, that's fine. It sounds like there have been other events in the past, and while everybody else is drinking, you just don't partake. That's fine. That's a healthy boundary. But you can't tell other people what to do. It's their life, not yours. And I think going about it from this kind of accusatory route, like she was saying in this post, like, you guys need to grow up. Like, I think it's childish if you can't have fun without alcohol. And while I understand that that's her value, like you said, the holidays are typically a time for people to relax and enjoy and drink and enjoy a Christmas martini fun recipe they found online. This is not I would I would assume that this family, and maybe I shouldn't be assuming anything here, but that this is not something that they do all the time. This is just specifically for holidays because this is a relaxing time for them to kind of spend time with their family.
Yeah.
And so I feel like it begs the question of, if you're hosting it and your boundaries are that you don't want alcohol, but your husband drinks alcohol, where's the line of what boundaries are acceptable to have versus not acceptable to have? It's different when you're a struggling alcoholic, and that, you know, is maybe something different, but that doesn't sound like this is what it is. It just seems like this person was really affected because someone in their immediate family was an alcoholic, and so they don't have a good view on alcohol. So is this a question of not necessarily whether or not there's alcohol at the event? Is it your lack of respect for the other people in the family because they do choose to drink alcohol? I don't know. That's kind of the first part of what I am thinking through in my brain when I'm reading through that situation.
Yeah, I agree. I have the question of the why because it is interesting that she says, I think it's childish. You can't have fun without alcohol. Not, I've seen what it can do to people, right? Like,
Mhm.
it doesn't sound like we're speaking from understanding the difference between alcohol in moderation and enjoyment and celebration and a healthy relationship with it versus the disorder.
Mhm.
Um, because it's once again not something people would choose. Like, you don't just choose to struggle with that. It's interesting because it sounds like maybe it could be her speaking from her pain and being like, I struggled so much in my life because of this, like, and her way of coping is being like, it's just a choice. Why can't you guys have fun without it? But either way, that's not right. And yeah, I would be curious to know at what level we're drinking frequently in this family. Because once again, if it always ends in a fist fight or
Right.
like holes in your wall, then like 100%. And also, it does sound like she was very excited to host. It doesn't sound like okay, well, if it's my freaking turn to host and you guys want me to do this, like my one rule, because you guys get so wild, is no drinking. Like that's my rule, or I have the ability to like kick you out. And it
Right.
sounds like, well, I wanted to host and I wanted this. And it can be super fun and exciting to host, but like hosting isn't necessarily hosting is about like holding a space that fosters enjoyment and connection and celebration. And it sounds like we weren't doing that. It sounds like we were kind of speaking negatively about others and their them as individuals and their lifestyles and their experiences. And yeah, we could have had a conversation of, hey guys, like
Yeah.
I really want to host. I want to do this for you guys. It's my turn and this. And And then on the second half, though, the sister also could have been like, "Hey, that's really important to us. Like, and honestly, I feel really judged and I don't feel safe around you. So I'm going to throw a separate event. You're welcome to still have your Christmas party, but I don't want to be somewhere that I feel judged." Like that could have been a conversation as well.
Yeah, it sounds like the way that it's written, that it's not based out of a concern for the people that drink. It sounds like just a true, like, lack of respect for people who drink, and I think that that's kind of where it teeters a little bit, because if you just don't respect people who drink, I feel one of those people is your husband. So that I have questions around that. But then also, if you're hosting and people are coming over, to fully cut alcohol off from everyone is not the end of the world. I do understand, as somebody who's like, well, I don't drink, so why do you guys have to drink? Like, I understand the thought process of somebody who's hosting and allowing other people into their home, but I guess where I get tripped up is that the husband drinks, so it's not that this is an alcohol-free home, like, this is a home that everybody has drank in before, so at
Yeah.
that point, why wouldn't you put a level on it or make some sort of game out of it, going back to kind of making a joke out of things, like, "Okay, you guys can drink, but everyone gets to bring 1 bottle of wine of their choice, and then that's all that we're gonna have. We're not bringing out the vodka, taking shots, if that's, how that, traditionally happens in that family. Making something out of it to where you're in a little bit more control over the alcohol without actually partaking in the
Mhm.
alcohol, if that's the concern, getting kind of wasted drunk. Yeah. And then the other part that I find interesting is that she obviously has a good relationship with the rest of the family. If they called her about the event, and she was like, "Actually, we're not going to have any alcohol. I would be interested to know how that conversation went, like how she phrased it, because if it does sound like it's coming from this lack of respect, then I can assume that somebody on the other end may be like, "Oh, weird," and
Yeah.
mm,
Someone may feel like you've been judging them this whole time.
yeah,
Like, since she's been going up to other people's houses, like, you don't have as much say. Like, when you're the only sober person in the room, we all know it gets a little annoying, and if you're at somebody else's house, you may leave a little early because 'cause you're like, "I am tired." Like, whether it be you're not drinking for whatever reason, like, we've all been there where you're like, "Yeah, I'm not on the same level, you guys. I love this for you, but I'm gonna go to bed. Like, I will
yeah,
see you in the morning." And there's other times where it's your friend, right?
right.
But, like, when you're on the other end of it, or at somebody else's home, you don't have as much, like, wiggle room, I guess. You just kind of are like, "Okay, well, I'm gonna go home." Whereas this may be the first time that her opinions are having to come to light,
Mm,
and,
mhm,
like, if I was on the other end of that and I was like, "Catherine, are you serious? Like, what are we doing here?" And if she
right,
was like, "Yeah, no, I just don't really, like it, I don't really agree with it," I'd be thinking about every Christmas, every Easter, every time I was drinking in front of you, and
right.
you were quiet, and you said you just didn't wanna drink. Now I'm thinking, "Oh my gosh, I feel judged."
Mhm,
You know? And that's also, like you said, depending on how she phrased it, unless she was like, "It just really reminds me of, like, not a good place, like, with my dad and the holidays. It's too much for me, and I really just want, like, a gentle holiday, that's not putting me back in that space." Like, we don't know if she said that, right? But back to our lovely compromises that we always bring up, maybe there could have been a compromise of, like, a whole day affair. If she lives near another family member, okay, we'll do, like, lunch and presents, and then we'll do the after party at, like, Stacy's house, where it's, like, a whole fun little house hopping adventure, you know?
yeah, yeah, I think that that's a good idea to come at it from that way, instead of planning an entirely different event when it is your year to host, right? If this person is looking
Mhm.
forward to it, which it does sound like from what their post looks like, how can you compromise in a way that your home doesn't have alcohol, but then drive somewhere else and you do desserts like that other one where they say we always do desserts with our in-laws. Could you have done it in a way like that? Because then you had the escape route if it really is the alcohol thing that you can leave at any point and everyone else can keep drinking. Because I do feel like if you have the alcohol in your house, I can see in a sense how maybe you feel a little trapped with it, like, "Man, I have no escape route of my own," but when it's at somebody else's and I do have that escape route for when things get a little rowdy and I'm the only one sober there? So I get
Yeah.
that. I understand that. I do feel like there is a better way to go about it, and I do feel like maybe it is a little spiteful for whoever the poster is to make their husband stay with them on Christmas instead of being with his family. I feel like that's a little spiteful at that point. Maybe you just kind of like count your losses, or maybe you say, "Hey, you go. I'll be here alone." Or I don't know what the compromise would be at that point because it sounds like there was a kind of that's a really hurtful thing for somebody else to like kind of take that holiday away from you.
Yeah, I kind of get, though, him being frustrated too, or her being frustrated because, um, it sounds like she wasn't given a conversation, especially, like, she said the sister initially sounded fine with it, and then she found out the sister was texting the whole family,
Mhm.
uh, and then they all did their investigative work, and then it sounds like they weren't like, "But, like, okay, well, we might do something," like, it sounds like she had no heads up,
Right.
which I would be frustrated about of, like, "Okay, guys, if it was that important to you, like, we could have found a compromise because it's important for me to be around you guys, and
Right.
this is my boundary. How do we respect your like, it I would be frustrated too if I was her, even if, like, I don't necessarily agree with her initial boundaries, to then also not have the follow-up conversation of, like, I see how she got there of, like, "No, they didn't even care to talk to me about it because sometimes we all have maybe a not great opinion or an opinion that doesn't agree the masses don't agree with, but we can
Right.
choose to talk through them." But that's also making the assumption she communicated it kindly to the family and not in a judgmental way.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a hard one. I feel like we need more information to know whether or not that person was the a-hole. Like, in a sense, just the way that it's phrased like, I think it's childish, we need to grow up in that sense. If
Mhm,
it is truly taken in that route, I do think that person is kind of the a-hole. At that point,
mhm,
you could have allowed the alcohol into your house, but maybe with some sort of limitations. Because at that point, it's like you're pushing your ideology and your values and what you think is important onto other people when you don't have the right to necessarily do that. I think there are other ways
mhm.
to make a happy medium, some sort of compromise, like we said. And there's a lot of different options to go about that. So I don't know, maybe that person is a a-hole.
And at first, whenever we read it, I thought about dry weddings,
Yeah.
but the usual main reasons 3 reasons people have dry weddings are finances.
Mhm.
Wedding bars are very expensive to have.
Mhm.
2, a large percentage of family members struggling with alcohol present at the wedding. So like you said, it's
Mhm.
someone in the room is in either active recovery, or on the road to recovery, and, it wouldn't be the best environment, so that's the compromise for their safety and well-being.
Right.
Or 3, the bride and groom don't drink, so they're like, "We don't drink, we're not spending," and, like, most of our friends don't, so we're not gonna spend the money on it for the 3 friends that do.
Right.
Um, Because at first I was like, "Well, people have dry weddings, what about dry," and I was like, "Well, this doesn't really fall in that because if it was finances, they could bring their own bottles. If it was not wanting it around her or the kids, she clearly goes to the other holiday events, so that's not what it is.
Yeah.
Maybe she just doesn't want it in her own home. Maybe she doesn't even allow her husband to bring it in the home, which is possible.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, it's not finances if they could bring their own bottle.
Mhm.
She didn't say she was struggling with it. She didn't say the husband or any other guest was struggling with it. So, yeah, not
Yeah.
the same.
Yeah, I don't feel like yeah, I agree. I don't think that's the same. And even with a dry wedding, even if like they're not paying for the wedding, it's usually in some place like a church or something where it's not allowed, or it's a cash bar, so they're not paying for it, but if you want to drink it, it's, available for you. And I feel like you could take that same approach with something that's hosted in your house if you're not currently like battling an addiction to alcohol, if it's not deeper than that. And that's a totally different issue. But in this issue, it doesn't sound like she's dealing with that, just some um personal values, I guess, almost on that.
Yeah. These are hard to do because you don't have enough
Yeah,
context.
it's true.
Like, you really don't, because there's so many questions of, like, okay, did the sister act like she was fine with it and then go talk to everyone? Or
Mhm,
did she have a conversation with you that she wasn't, that why she was uncomfortable and why it was important, and you
mhm.
ignored it, and then she planned another gathering, you were told. Like, I
Yeah,
have so many other questions.
yeah, yeah, it's true. It's true, yeah, there's definitely it I do get it though. I understand coming from a place of like, well, why can't you just deal with it like without alcohol for a day? I totally understand that. But I also understand the other spectrum of it too. It's like this is a celebration, this is a holiday, this is something that
Mhm.
I look forward to, and this is part of my expectations for Christmas. And it'd be different if it was like her birthday. That's totally different.
Yeah, that's fair. If it was like, "Hey, we're going to the park," like, or whatever,
Yeah.
my dinner. I'm hosting a dinner party and there's no alcohol, whatever,
Right.
my birthday. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Hmm.
Mixed bag on this one. I think it's also hard for this one because it's a very sensitive topic of.
Yeah, I don't know. Family dynamics. Yeah, they're a tricky one because I feel like really this episode was just us like going over these situations and giving our opinions on it and what we would, recommend doing in these situations. And hopefully it was helpful for someone. I definitely find it interesting. It's fascinating to listen to other
Mhm.
people's problems.
Yep.
Yeah,
Mhm. And it makes you feel less alone sometimes. Like,
absolutely.
wow, we're all struggling a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So let this be a reminder to what did we say? We said write down your boundaries, write down your expectations, and then write down your escape plan. What are your
Mhm.
options? What are your different thoughts? Or if you know that there's a certain conversation that happens to always get brought up, what are ways to get out of that conversation? What are ways to kind of, turn a joke onto it to make it more lighthearted and kind of avoid the topic almost? And I think there's yeah, hopefully you got something out of this, guys.
Yeah, maybe,
Maybe. We'll find out. Let me
hopefully.
know. If you want more episodes like this, we can have Jackie on. Keep doing this. This could be a regular occurrence. Just let me know. Send me a DM, drop it in the comments. Let me know. And thank you, Jackie. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. This was fun.
I know, it's so fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of
I loved it.
course. I love you. I love you, girl.
And the pod. I also love the pod.
Yeah.
Great stuff happening here. Everyone follow, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, do all the things, click all the buttons. I don't know where all this lives, so.
It lives everywhere. All right, we have made it to good climate news. Today's article is technically not like a technical good climate news, but I just found this piece to be very interesting. It is from happyeconews.com and it is called How Being a Mindful Shopper Can Help the Environment. And I just feel like this time of year, there's a lot of buy, buy, buy mentality and a lot of, companies trying to hit their Q4 revenue and income and all that stuff, which makes sense. But it's hard when you're trying to be mindful because all you see are these sales and you're like, oh, but look, this item is 10% off, but it's not worth it in the end. So I just find the article very interesting. It's just a opinion piece about how you can be more mindful when shopping and how that can help the environment at the end of the day. As always, I will link that in the show notes for anybody interested in reading about it. And if you would like to follow the podcast, you can follow us at Mind Body Planet Podcast on Instagram. You can follow me, Crystal and Geyer, on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. I'm on all those platforms, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.